Story title: Heat over Heart. When love becomes a liability, revenge becomes a strategy. This is not just a love story. It's about what happens when someone chooses passion over principle and pays for it. Will revenge heal her or destroy what's left of her heart? The night she set his life on fire was the same night she realized she still loved him. Pause. Beat. And that's what made her revenge dangerous. The heat. The night Zaria Kana decided to burn her past did not begin with fire. It began with warmth. Not the comforting kind that settles into your bones on a quiet evening, but the dangerous kind, the slow, spreading heat that starts beneath the ribs and climbs upward as it goes. The kind that warns you something inside has already shifted, even if your mind is still pretending everything is fine. Zaria stood alone in her apartment, city lights bleeding through the tall window like distant embers scattered across the dark. The room was clean, intentional, untouched by chaos. Every object was where it belonged, every surface clear, except the phone. It rested face down on the table, vibrating softly, once, twice, then going still. She did not reach for it. Her body already knew what waited on the screen. Some betrayals arrive loudly, shattered glass, raised voices, doors slammed hard enough to shake the walls. This one came quietly. A pause that lasted too long. A silence that felt deliberate. The kind of silence that carries intent. Zaria smiled. That smile scared her more than tears ever could. Because smiles don't come from shock. They come from clarity. When trust breaks quietly. Zaria Kana had never been reckless with love. She had grown up watching promises dissolve under pressure, watching people say one thing and mean another when no one was watching. Trust, to her, was not something freely given. It was built, measured carefully over time. She noticed patterns, how people treated waiters, how they spoke about those who couldn't defend themselves, how their tone shifted when power entered the room. Love, she believed, was a calculated risk. Elian Vex dismantled that belief without ever raising his voice. He was calm where others were performative, precise where others were loud. He listened, really listened, in a way that made people feel chosen instead of consumed. When he asked questions, he waited for answers. When he offered affection, it felt deliberate, not desperate. When he chose Zaria, it didn't feel impulsive. It felt intentional. She made room for him in a life that had been carefully fortified, let him see the parts of her she rarely exposed, the ambition, the fear of stagnation, the deep need for control she masked as discipline. And when she trusted him completely. That was her mistake. The image reached her the same way it reached everyone else. Public, celebrated, shared with a caption crafted to sound poetic rather than cruel. Elian's hand, unmistakable, rested at the small of another woman's back. The intimacy was effortless, familiar. The angle intentional enough to erase doubt. Some connections are inevitable. Zaria stared at the screen, waiting for grief to arrive. It didn't. What came instead was clarity. She wasn't being replaced. She had been managed. The moment before anger. Anger is supposed to come first. That's what people expect. The explosion, the confrontation, the accusations sharpened by pain. But anger did not visit Zaria that night. She moved through her apartment slowly, deliberately. She poured herself a glass of water and stood and drank it.
She stared out the window at the city she had built herself into. Her phone buzzed again. She ignored it, because somewhere deep inside she understood something important. If she reacted now, she would be reacting on his terms. And Zarya Kana did not react. She withdrew. Disappearance. Zarya did not call. She did not ask for explanations wrapped in apologies or closure disguised as justification. She did not demand honesty from someone who had already proven comfortable with deception. She did something far more destabilizing. She disappeared. No messages, no reactions, no indirect posts meant to wound or be noticed. She stepped out of Elian's orbit entirely, leaving behind nothing but unanswered space. Silence unsettles people who rely on control. Elian waited for confrontation. It never came. Days passed, then weeks. 3 weeks of absence that grew heavier than any argument ever could. By the time her message finally arrived, "We need to talk," it carried no emotion, no urgency, no explanation, only inevitability. The return. The cafe was too bright for a conversation like this. Glass walls, open seating, sunlight spilling into places secrets preferred to hide. Elian arrived early. Zarya arrived exactly on time. She looked the same. That was the lie. The truth lived in her eyes, steady, settled, no longer searching for permission or reassurance. She sat across from him, folded her hands, and waited. Elian spoke first. Not to apologize, to explain. He spoke of timing, of growth, of inevitability, of connections that outgrew their original shape. His voice was calm, reasonable, practiced. Zarya listened. She nodded. She observed. When she said, "I forgive you," the words landed like a miscalculation. Forgiveness without reconciliation is not mercy. It is release. As she stood to leave, she offered him one final sentence. "You should stop lying to her." The freeze in his expression confirmed everything. Lyra Vale. Lyra Vale was not what Zarya expected. She was warm, open, disarmingly honest, and unaware. That innocence complicated everything. They met by design disguised as accident, a shared elevator, casual laughter, a comment about the weather that turned into conversation. Lyra spoke easily, trusting without suspicion. Zarya listened, learned, positioned herself not as a threat, but as a mirror. Lyra talked about Elian's late nights, his sudden distractions, the way he avoided certain questions with charm instead of answers. She mentioned the documents he rushed her into signing. The pattern was familiar. Zarya felt heat bloom behind her ribs. She liked Lyra. That was the problem. Becoming close. Days turned into meetings. Meetings turned into coffee. Coffee turned into conversations that lingered longer than planned. Zarya found herself learning the sound of Lyra's laugh, the cadence of her worries, the small tells that revealed doubt even when words tried to hide it. Elian remained unaware. That was intentional. Zarya did not push. She did not warn. She let the truth rise naturally, like heat beneath the surface. Because truth, when discovered personally, cuts deeper than truth delivered. Fault lines. The first sign something was wrong came quietly. Elian began to watch. Longer pauses, questions framed as jokes, smiles that didn't quite reach his eyes. He sensed the shift. Lyra sensed it too. One afternoon, her voice faltered mid-sentence. She pulled out her phone and showed Zarya a message sent at 2:17 a.m. It wasn't meant for her. It wasn't meant for Zarya. It was meant for someone else. The realization settled heavily between them. This wasn't a mistake. This was a system. The choice. Zarya could have ended it then, exposed everything, shattered illusions cleanly. Instead, she offered Lyra one truth. He lies when he feels cornered. Nothing more, nothing less. Sometimes restraint is not mercy, it is strategy. The matchstick. The event was crowded, loud enough to hide secrets, public enough to make consequences permanent. Elian's confidence cracked when Zarya did not flinch at his proximity. When he leaned close and whispered, "You still care," something inside her snapped, not violently, but cleanly. She turned to Lyra, placed her phone gently into her hand, and said, "Read this." The truth did the rest. The real damage. The messages devastated Lyra, but they were not the real damage. That lived elsewhere. In documents rushed, in clauses altered, in signatures that carried consequences no charm could undo. Elian realized too late that Zarya had never acted from rage. She acted from patience. Collapse. Notifications followed, emails marked urgent, calls unanswered, panic masquerading as professionalism. Elian reached out, not with remorse, with control. Zarya did not respond. Ashes. Victory did not arrive. Silence did. Lyra came without armor, asking questions that carried weight rather than blame. Zarya answered honestly, knowing honesty does not erase harm. Elian's final message framed destruction as cruelty. Zarya replied once, "I didn't destroy you, I stopped protecting you." She blocked him. Zarya burned the last photograph that night, not in anger, in acceptance. Ashes drifted into the dark, light enough to disappear. She understood now that revenge was not power, clarity was, and clarity always leaves something behind. Not everything broken needs fixing. Some things are meant to end, and some endings are not cold, they are warm, like heat over heart. The long burn. What silence teaches. In the weeks that followed, Zarya learned something unexpected. Silence had a sound. It hummed beneath ordinary moments, morning lights spilling across the floor, the quiet click of her kettle, the rhythm of her breathing when she lay awake at night. Without Elian's presence filling every pause, she noticed how much space he had once occupied. Not love, control. She replayed conversations in her head, not with longing, but with curiosity. Each memory revealed a pattern she hadn't been ready to see before. How he redirected questions, how he framed discomfort as insecurity, how he made certainty feel dramatic and doubt feel immature. Heat returned sometimes, but it no longer confused her. Lyra's aftermath. Lyra did not disappear. She unraveled slowly. Some days she was furious, other days numb. Some days she defended Elian out of habit, even while knowing better. Trauma does not dissolve just because truth arrives. Zarya stayed present but distant, available but not intrusive. Lyra asked questions that had no clean answers. Was I stupid? Zarya shook her head. You were targeted. That distinction mattered. Elian unmasked. Elian tried every strategy he knew. Appeals to history, claims of misunderstanding, warnings disguised as concern. When none worked, his tone shifted, cold.